Hello, my name is Nancy Young, and welcome to another episode of Your Voice Matters with Nancy Young, a program highlighting the positive voices within our local communities and how they're impacting and uplifting our world one person at a time. Now, before we get started, go ahead and hit the like and subscribe button. Today, we'll be highlighting your voice through that of turning passion into a fulfilling career. My guest today, Miss Priya Saiprasad, is from San Francisco, California. She is a partner at Mayfield who has a passion for investing and partnering with groundbreaking entrepreneurs in enterprise software technology. Priya's industry visibility and track record earned her a spot in the 2019 Forbes 30 Under 30 Venture Capitalist. At this time, let's welcome Miss Priya. So welcome, Priya. All right, so you are a very inspiring young lady. So I want to start with the 2019 Forbes 30 Under 30 Venture Capitalist that you made it on. And so tell me about that. How was that for you?
Yeah, it's a good question. You work really hard at the job day in and day out. And sometimes all these lists have different sort of, interpretations externally, but it was so validating to know that I'm on the right track, to wake up one day. So they don't actually tell you beforehand that you made the list, so I woke up one day and found out that I made this list. And it was great to see that some of the work that I was doing and working really hard for was actually being appreciated externally. And also in that moment, I remember thinking, wow, my parents will feel really proud. So it was a great moment. Yeah.
Okay, so for all the lay people who may not know, what is a venture capitalist?
It's a good question. So I think America is all about capitalism and being able to go out there and you can start anything from scratch, right? So if you want to build a business completely from scratch, you have a couple of options. One is to build it through your own capital, your own money that you've saved up over time, or your family money that you've saved up. And option number two is to raise capital from folks who are out there looking to invest in you. And once you raise capital, you give up a little bit of ownership for your company over time, but you get to build this business together through someone else's capital that's taking a percentage of your business over time. And so that's essentially the concept of venture capital. And venture capital typically exists within the technology sector or just sectors that are sort of forthcoming with future innovations. And so if you were starting a startup and we're looking to raise capital, you should talk to me.
Okay, because I see that right now you're a partner at Mayfield.
I am.
It says that you have a passion for investing in and partnering with groundbreaking entrepreneurs and what is it, enterprise software technology. So that's your main focus that you look at connecting people to?
Right. I think that the thing that really inspires me every single day is to meet an entrepreneur who, for some reason, is so passionate about a particular problem that they're trying to solve. They've ideally faced the problem in some capacity or experienced it, and they want to leverage technology in some capacity to be able to solve that problem. And so their passion sort of inspires me to be passionate and to see them I think being an entrepreneur is one of the toughest jobs you can have because you're taking on so much risk when you can have the stability of sort of a job that doesn't require that sort of risk, but you're putting all your eggs in one basket. You're foregoing like a steady stream of income for X number of years with the possibility that most startups actually fail versus succeed. And so you're taking all that risk head on. And so there's nothing more inspiring to me than that. And so my job on a regular basis is to meet with entrepreneurs that are looking to build these groundbreaking technologies and identify sort of the best category leading entrepreneurs to invest in. And so VC firms have our limited partners who give us capital to invest. So I take that job very seriously because when we're talking about broader social issues as well, in terms of economic empowerment and whatnot, it's important to keep that in mind when you're when you have a lot of capital to deploy into the brightest entrepreneurs.
Okay, yeah, because I'm sure people are trying to figure out what they want to do now, not only as an entrepreneur, but as an investor. So with everything that's going on, it's a lot of reevaluation going on and looking into opportunities. So let's take back just a little bit. You're still a young lady, and so but let's go back to when you were a young girl. What did you dream of being? What did you dream of doing? Did you always have this in mind?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. So I grew up in a family where I'm so thankful because both my parents, the number one priority was for them was my education and my ability to make something better of my life over time. And so growing up in that household, a lot of folks don't have necessarily that same privilege. So I attribute so much to sort of the values that they raised me with, which is it was integrity. And it's a lot of being able to be achievement oriented while still being empathetic. And so those values were really helpful. And so as a kid, I moved around a lot. So we moved around. I was born in Chennai, but when I was 6 months old, we moved to Africa and Nigeria. And then we moved around a lot as a kid. And so from that experience, I had sort of been exposed to different sort of political climates, economic climates. And I realized that my dad was the CFO of a few companies through that time. And I just found that idea of creating a company and then building it into sort of this everlasting business to be super fascinating. Like what made MySpace, and Facebook, right? Like what were the levers that made one super successful and one, not necessarily see that same degree of success? And so that sort of spark in innovation and curiosity I had as a kid. And the other part is my parents sort of raised me to never take no for an answer. And they raised me with literally the sky is the limit for what I can go achieve. So I always dreamed really, really big. And sometimes I would just tell these stories to my parents where in the future, when I'm 30, I'm going to be here. I really think I'm going to elevate our lives in XYZ. And I really think I'm going to accomplish a lot in my career. And I think back then they were just like, oh my God, Priya is just kind of crazy. Right. So, but it's very interesting looking back on it now. I did sort of really put myself out there and I went and majored in business administration at Berkeley because I knew that for someone like me who's so fascinated about business concepts that I've got to learn the basics before I apply it. And then when I was in Berkeley, I realized that, wow, I actually want to be part of this company building process. But I haven't been raised to necessarily be a massive risk taker. And so I want to invest in massive risk takers because I admire them so much. Sometimes you admire what you don't necessarily always have. And so that's kind of what led me down this path. But yeah, does that answer your question?
Yes. So I was going to ask you too, how did you decide to go to UC Berkeley and study business? So you already had that in mind, that's yes. What you wanted to do.
That's correct.
So you graduated from UC Berkeley in 2010. So here we are 1 decade later. And so although you literally woke up in the morning and saw your name on the list, it didn't just happen overnight. And so you had to build that because as many people are watching this, we're giving inspiring stories so that people can even take a look at their lives and what they want to do and whatever that passion is. And so it takes steps. Like you said, your parents instill different values in you and really encourage you to dream big. And I think that's important for people to have those dreams, to have those visions, to speak things, and then begin to go after those things. So tell me about your journey over these last 10 years from graduation. So did you already have a job lined up or, what happened from there?
I actually think this is somewhat of an interesting story because, throughout high school and throughout college, throughout the educational system, I knew what was exactly expected of me. I've got to get an A on this project at hand. I've got to pass this class, and everything was pretty standard. And I was a straight A student and did everything that was expected of me. There were a lot less variables in the equation. And then when I graduated college, when you're out in the real world, the reality is I hadn't actually been used to the concept of failure and been used to the concept of necessarily things not going as planned, because I'd always had this 10-year plan for me, 20-year plan for me, and I always stuck with it. But things don't work out like that after college. And so when I was at Haas in the undergraduate program at Berkeley, I realized that I'm really drawn to numbers. I've been very analytical from a really young age. And so I knew that if it was a marketing route, finance route, or a more creative route, I knew that I should probably stick with what I knew I was good at, which was more the finance route. So I actually pursued a career in investment banking right out of college. I knew that it would sort of give me the toolkit necessary for me to leverage to another sort of business-oriented career later. And so I went into banking, and I was doing leverage finance investment banking, and banking is pretty grueling as a space to start off with. And this was kind of right after the '08 crisis that had happened, so it was a really interesting time to be doing banking. And I realized, I thought this. For me, I thought investment banking was going to be it. This is going to be like the dream. I'm going to make it over here. And I had my path charted out for me. And I realized I was doing the job well, but I wasn't passionate about what I was doing. I realized very quickly that I liked aspects of the role, and I liked aspects about, learning about different business models on a day-to-day basis, because you're never dealing with one particular type of business. But it wasn't necessarily where my heart initially was, which was innovation and being sort of at the forefront of innovation and being able to meet incredible entrepreneurs who are risking their lives to start groundbreaking businesses, right? And so at that point, I realized, oh my God, I have no idea which direction my life is going to go in right now. But I know that I have to follow my passions. And because I feel like you can work hard and you can accomplish a lot, but if your head's not in the game and if you're not that passionate about it, I really don't think I could have accomplished what I accomplished then in my career if I hadn't pivoted as necessary. So then I decided I'll do my 2 years in banking, and then I will explore a path that gets me closer to being at the center of entrepreneurship and innovation. So I transitioned and worked for a fund called Saints Capital, which was a venture capital fund. And so that was kind of my first foray into venture. And I loved sort of everything about it. And it was sort of like a good step into being able to do what I'm passionate about. But then I realized I need a little bit of operating skills where I've not necessarily run different parts of a business before because I've been so analytical and doing more finance-oriented roles. So what is it like to actually be part of an exhilarating startup and experience pre-IPO, post-IPO, and what's that like? And so I actually went to Square to be part of their 2-person corp dev team. Corp dev and strategy team, which basically identifying ways that Square could grow inorganically through acquiring companies in order to augment their organic growth path. And so, that was a phenomenal experience because up until that point in my career, I was pretty much the only woman in any room that I was in. And so it was a pretty male-dominated field, and I was the youngest usually in the room, and I was the woman in the room. So there's always, you have to work really hard. These are very tough jobs, but I always felt like I had to work a little bit harder than everyone else to just be their equal in a meeting, right? And so Square was such a unique experience for me because it was the first time where the C-suite at Square, C-level executives were 50-50 split between men and women, which is pretty rare in the tech industry. And of that, the more what you would classify as male-dominated roles, like your chief technology officer, your chief financial officer, all of them are actually women. And so the reverse, what you would consider the more female-dominated roles were men. So it was actually this very interesting dynamic, and there were so many powerful women there. The CFO at the time was this woman named Sarah Fryer. CTO at the time, who's still the CTO there, is a woman named Alyssa Henry. And they're such powerful, enigmatic women who sort of owned their own authenticity and what they brought to work on a daily basis. Like they were polar opposites from each other. So I also knew that I didn't have to mold myself into something I wasn't in order to be in a powerful position at work. I just had to own my own authentic self and bring it out 100%, you know? And so Square was just transformational from sort of an elevated leadership building experience for me. And I got promoted a few times at Square, and ended up actually getting recruited by someone that I'd worked with back in the day at Saints Capital, who is now the second employee of Microsoft's new venture fund. So Microsoft was launching their own new venture fund, Microsoft Ventures, but then we rebranded to M12 afterwards. And so I would be one of the earliest founding team members of M12, getting to build this VC arm from scratch. It just seemed like one of those opportunities that, you know, as a 20 something, I just could not pass up on, right? Because not only would I be investing in the next set of brilliant entrepreneurs, but I also sort of building a VC fund from scratch with the backing of this incredible behemoth of a company. And so that was sort of my next transition. And to be honest, M12 was such a wonderful experience. The team was fantastic. The person who runs the fund is fantastic, and was sort of my biggest champion through the journey. And at M12, you know, what I realized over time is, you know, while I've done some really interesting and valuable things, I wouldn't have been able to sort of accelerate my career path over time if I didn't have one person at work who was powerful and influential, who believed in me and sort of went to bat for me. And so I felt like I was really thankful, because I've had that in most of my jobs so far, like the person usually that I reported into, or even that person's manager. And so at Square, it was, I reported into a man named Anton Hannenbrink, who ran Corp Dev, but then the CFO was who we rolled into, and she was a phenomenal mentor for me. And at M12, it was the person who ran M12. He's a phenomenal mentor. So it helps being like super driven and being very hardworking, plus the combination of someone believing in you.
It's hilarious, because I feel like I gave you all of my questions and you just answered it like an essay. Let me just go right there. Just answer all these things. You'll have the thing about mentors in your life, and you know your journey, how you do that. And I know mentors are very important, but as you have mentioned, the two women, to be able to see somebody that you can kind of relate to, even though they were polar opposites, to really help you to identify, you know, still who you are. And I think it's important for people to know that the best person they can be is themselves, to be authentically them, because everybody else is taken. Nobody can be exactly like you are. And I find your story incredibly inspiring, actually. And so no matter what age, because I think some people, they do get into a career and they feel like, hey, I went to school for this, or, you know, this is what I fell into, and I just got to make it work. I don't have to, you know, I don't have the opportunity or the chance to do something different. But you're showing that you can change gears, you can change and try to do something else. And so when you wanted to kind of step back and get some other real hands-on operational kind of things, and with the startup to see how it was for yourself. See, Square was unknown back then. Square is very known right now, so you chose a good one to go into and to be able to grow with. And I think people investing, so you talk about venture capitalists and investment, but that personal investment, to be able to pull that from someone else to be able to invest in you. And so have you had the opportunity in mentorship then, so we'll change it a little bit, you know, to be able to mentor and help inspire others?
Absolutely. Actually, yeah. One advice that I got very early in my career was to build your own personal board of directors. And so I like that one, where you can seek out who gets to be on the board of Priya Saiprasad's career development, right? And you can include as diverse of folks as you want, both in terms of background, in terms of perspectives, everything. And so I normally have one person. I have my direct managers are always in there, but then also folks who are not in the same industry, but who are such creative thinkers and people who challenge you and can bring in this sort of outside in perspective on what's happening with your career. And some of the best advice I've had, like some of my mentors are still folks from Square, which isn't necessarily that related to my day-to-day in my current job, but they've pushed me so far because they know you as a person and they know who your authentic self is, and they're genuine well-wishers for you. And so they will tell you things like it is, even if it's not something you want to hear, right? So candid feedback is something you can really expect from your personal board of directors, and being vulnerable and being able to lean on them when you're making some really tough decisions or you're facing some tough situations. So, so I sought out for myself a personal board of directors over time. It's now 10 people, and my mom's actually in there, but so what I've been telling folks that are now graduating college and going through sort of their journey, build your own personal directors over time. Make sure you have as many perspectives in there as possible, because no one feedback is like, you can't internalize every feedback you get. Some's correct, some's not. But if you get enough perspective, it points you in a direction that sort of makes sense. And so, so I hope to be on other people's personal board of directors, and over time I've mentored folks, both within the companies that I've worked for, and then also within the broader industry as well. I'm really big in giving back to the Cal community, and so so that's been sort of huge for me. And also in general, I think venture capital has a long ways to go in terms of making capital equitable for everyone. And so I think there's so many different initiatives that can be done to sort of even level the playing field, if you will, make sure folks who don't necessarily have access to Bay Area venture capitalists and are building a company based in, call it, I don't know, like downtown Michigan, right? And so how do they get exposure to new funds as they're building their companies? And so being able to identify folks like that and then mentor them so that they end up starting their next company. It may not be their first company that you invest in, but it's a long-term relationship, and you might invest in their second company. And so, so I'm very keen on identifying people who need mentorship from non-traditional backgrounds and trying to mentor them.
So who do you really talk to? Do you talk to the everyday person or the people that have a lot of money?
I would say both, because when I work with venture capitalists, you know, these are the folks who have a ton of money to deploy, and when I talk to entrepreneurs, these might be folks who might be the most wealthy 10 years from now because they've created the next massive, call it next generation of Amazon, right? And so, but at the time they're not, and that's why they're starting this endeavor. And so I almost feel like I deal with so much potential of wealth on a daily basis. Mm-hmm. And it's also so liberating to know that, you know, anything can change overnight in someone's trajectory, right? As long as you have a few raw ingredients, like clearly you need to have drive, passion, work ethic, all these things that sort of lead you forward, and maybe some sort of a unique pain point that you've experienced that you're trying to solve now. But once you have those raw ingredients, it's really reassuring to see that miracles can happen. And it's not a miracle at that point because you have all the raw ingredients.
Well, it's still, you know, miracles happen all the time, but miracles need the raw ingredients, and it needs the opportunity, because so many people can have those ingredients, have the passion, the drive, the ideas, but where do you go and do that? I remember back probably 20 years ago, I was pregnant with my youngest son, and I had this idea for an electronic wallet, and I was like, oh, who can I get to invest in this? But I'm like, who's going to want to put their credit cards and things in some place where other people can get it? It's going to have to be so much security. And the idea actually stemmed from, I used to carry around a lot of pictures of my kids as they were growing up, because I have four. So I was pregnant with my fourth. And so anytime, you know, people want to see your kids, like, bam, you pull out this big thing out of your purse in your wallet or whatever that just unfolds with pictures hanging down. And so I was like, you know, it'd be great if we can take our phones, because at the time we were just barely having barely text. That's it. And it was no World Wide Web on your phone. And so I'm like, it could be on your phone or it could be on the screen. I had a Bible, electronic Bible, and I forgot who made that because I wrote to them and I told them my plan, and I was like, could you help me? But I never heard back from them. So, but at the time, then I started seeing all this other stuff come out because I just wanted to be able to create a catalog like on a phone where you could go click and you can have all your pictures, all the stuff that exists now. But 20 years ago, it didn't. And so, so some people have, gosh, I miss my moment of billionaire, but anyway.
You never know. You still have multiple decades.
Yeah. So, just for that person that, have these ideas, what can I do? And so, and some people may feel it only are limited to the knowledge that they have. And so if it's just based on your own capital, as you defined clearly at the beginning of this interview, that there's more than just that. And I know a lot of people that work really hard and they only use their own capital and, just trying to help grow that. But to be able to get in that vein and to connect with someone to be able to help them to move that along. And one thing I'm definitely taking from this interview is building my own personal board of directors. I have my own mentors, but I think it's a great idea. And so I need to, start building that to help me get to another level, because even though I mentor other people in different areas, and sometimes it's so much easier to see someone else and what they need than, internally absorbing that and doing what you need to do for yourself. But right. I really enjoyed this conversation. I'm so glad that you were able to take the time to talk with me today. So I don't know if there's anything else that you really want to share. I know for your free time, it talks about you like hip hop dancing. And
I do, yes.
So
it's my favorite activity to do.
Okay, so I know some people that love to sing and they get out there and do karaoke. I sing, but not karaoke. So are cuddling with your puppy and two cats. So they all get along?
And they all get along. Yeah, it's crazy. As you know, my mom has 4 dogs. So I grew up in a household full of, yes, grew up in a household full of dog lovers and became one as well. But earlier in my career, I didn't have the time to, walk the dog and do all the things that come along with a dog. So we ended up adopting cats, and cats are also fantastic. All animals are fantastic. They're such a source of joy. But then we finally felt like we were at a point in our lives where we were able to be responsible adults that could handle a puppy. And so now we have a border collie mixed puppy as well. And so now they all get along perfectly fine. I think they know that, they're all part of one pack or one unit. And so it's fantastic.
But it's important to know that you have a multifaceted life, because see, some people who are analytical and deal with numbers, it seems like they could be kind of boring because everything is so straight. I've worked with many engineers in my life. And so, but able to, have that, variety of life to be able to enjoy just multiple things within life. And so I think numbers probably just was in your bloodstream, in your DNA, since your dad's a CFO.
Right.
And so everybody doesn't have, some of those backgrounds. So real quickly, how would you inspire some young person that say, that sounds interesting and, maybe, I can develop this more. So what should they do?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I was actually thinking about this recently, where every profession has sort of the creme de la creme of their profession, right? You could be a chef, you could be a model, there's so many different types of professions out there. I think it's about finding something that you're truly passionate about early on and then cultivating it over time. And so it really doesn't have to be, I didn't know it was venture capital. I just knew I really loved innovation, and venture happened to be one way of addressing this. But if you're passionate about something, I think the young age is when I feel like all these fears that we have as adults when you're switching careers and things like that, none of that exists when you're young. And so if you're able to you're able to be your most raw self, and it's the perfect time for you to learn and sort of build a sense of expertise in that area. So just find something you're passionate in and just go all in. I think, actually, this is one of my favorite sayings, which is the harder you work, the luckier you get. And so I really truly internalize that, where if you work really hard in something that you're truly passionate about, the luckier you get.
Okay. Well, on that note, we will end today. And thank you so much for joining me. And so I'm sure we'll get to meet you in person one day soon. So,
yes, definitely.
I wish you all the best. Thank you,
Thanks
Priya.
so much, Nancy.
All right.
Bye.
Okay, bye-bye. Again, thank you to our guest today, Ms. Priya Saiprasad, for sharing how your voice is impacting our lives and inspiring current and future innovation. Now, if you've enjoyed today's show, go ahead and hit the like and subscribe button. If you'd like more information about how to get in touch with Ms. Priya Saiprasad, see the information on the screen below. Again, thank you for joining us for another episode of Your Voice Matters with Nancy Young. And until next time, remember, your voice matters. If you have something positive to share and you would like your voice to be highlighted on Your Voice Matters with Nancy Young, please contact me at YVMwithNancy@gmail.com. And if you've enjoyed this programming, please hit the subscribe button right now. Thank you.